remind everybody how we got to this point with our team of experts joining us right now in Atlanta. Mike Brooks, CNN law enforcement analyst. Also joining us, forensic psychologist Dr. Brian Russell and defense attorney Ivan Golde. Mike Brooks, what is your reaction to this theory that we've been hearing day after day, that now that she's out of jail, she's going to start singing like a canary? Isn't that what you do when you're in jail? Because jail equals pressure and isolation. And as you just heard, she's off having a lark right now.
Jane, she has not done one thing to date to further the investigation, to help investigators find Caylee. Now, her spokesman said just recently, oh, she's cooperating. She's able to say things now that she's out of jail. I don't agree with that. I'm not buying it, because she could have helped herself find Caylee, helped everyone else. But Jane, she has not told the truth one time about a single thing that we've heard.
Ivan Golde, attorney, this is what I would have done. If she had to leave and had to get out of jail, I would have said, you know what, just don't leave the state. Do whatever you want. Then I would have put her under surveillance and watched her. I'm not saying she's a criminal, but criminals do return to the scene of the crime. You know what I mean?
We must remember this. She is not charged with murder. She has not been charged with murder. The fact that she's not coming forward and giving information, she has no duty to do so.
But Ivan, does she want to find her daughter or not?
Listen,
how long has she had?
Please,
she been in jail?
I would never tell a client ever to come forward and talk to the police.
Oh, you don't want to find your daughter? Okay, don't talk to the cops because you don't want to find your daughter. That's the bottom line.
Her lawyer has a job to do, and her lawyer's job is to represent her. She should not talk to any authorities about this case. If she has information, fine. Should she talk to the media? Of course not.
Do we want to find the child or not? Dr. Brian Russell.
Jane, can I say something, please?
Sure.
It's one thing to be a liar. It's another thing to be a murderer. Now, the fact that she did not tell the police for 30 days her child was missing, that is outrageous. None of us can understand that. But please, that should not make us draw a wide conclusion that this woman killed her child. She may be mentally ill. She may have problems. Of course she should have reported that. But the evidence in this case, if you look at it, is not that strong.
Let's take a look at the evidence right now. Let's take a look at the timeline. The devil is definitely in the details in this case, and we've got a detailed timeline that begins June 9th. This is the day Casey Anthony claims she dropped Caylee off with a...
But there was also a fresh slab of concrete that they were focusing on, but apparently cadaver dogs did not hit on that area. So, that's just another theory,
This is the problem, Jane. There's a theory here. There's a theory there. Someone saw a shovel here. Someone saw something there. We don't have the evidence to prosecute this woman.
But Ivan, there was evidence in her car. What did her mother say? What did her mother say initially? It smelled like something was decomposing in the car.
Is her mother an expert?
Yeah, but her mother changed her mind and said it smelled like pizza.
It smelled something like that. There were some hairs that were maybe
her mother probably would know what but she's a nurse. Okay,
there is not enough evidence in this case. Period.
1 moment. What about the detective who testified, the homicide detective who testified from Orange County Sheriff's Office that it smelled like decomposing body to him? And what about the cadaver dog that hit on the trunk also? And the other evidence we're waiting to come back.
Right. We're waiting for the DNA, and that will tell a lot
of this story. Tell a lot. Now
that'll be the other shoe that'll drop. We're going to continue with our timeline when we come right back, and we're also going to continue.
No, we're waiting for that suspicious stain, the results of that, the results of possibly Caylee's hair in the back, and they also took an air sample from the trunk and sent it to the University of Tennessee, the body farm, because apparently they have new technology that as you decompose, you give off certain gases. With that air sample, they're able to say whether or not possibly it was a decomposing body or not.
And I would just like to point this out, Jane, if I could. DNA evidence can be used to exonerate a defendant as well. So this evidence may be used to show that she is completely not guilty of any of these crimes. This little girl could have been kidnapped. This little girl could have been taken away. I have a theory that she's scared to say who really did it. She may be mentally ill. That's why she didn't call the police.
The police have said there's no credible evidence of a kidnapping. So even though the family says that they're absolutely convinced, you can understand the family members being in denial because they're family members, but you can't understand everybody else saying that this is a kidnapping.
We've got to go, but we've got some more
fascinating issues to discuss.
I don't listen to everything the police say. Let me tell you
Ivan,
that.
how about this? How about when she said, oh, she just spoke to Caylee, and then she said she called the number back, and the number was out of service. Law enforcement checked
What
the
is that
checked the
proof?
record. Wait a
What
minute,
are we
let me
trying
finish.
to prove
There.
here?
Because
Please,
she
tell
lied.
me.
She
It
did
may
not
be calm
receive
outside the
an
house,
so
but it's
she's
not calm
lying.
in our
So what's the
studio.
next step?
And we have to end it right there because we have another completely wild case coming up. Remember that woman who accidentally strangled herself with handcuffs in an airport? Exactly. Ivan Golde, attorney, the family is suing the city of Phoenix for millions and millions of dollars. But if she was on the way to rehab, why didn't somebody call or accompany her, or at least tell the airline, hey, this is a woman who's going to rehab and she's under a lot of stress and she's got problems.
Well, to answer that, her father did that. That information never got to the airline. Look, I've represented many plaintiffs in police brutality cases, death cases, believe me. This woman is 45 years old. She weighs 105 pounds. She flunked the attitude test. She was loud, obnoxious. The police got upset, and mysteriously, there's no videotape of her being cuffed to that bench. Why is that? This case is simple. I think it's a legitimate lawsuit. They got upset. They were tired of her ranting and raving and yelling, and they roughed her up. And this is what happened. She was drunk. The fact that she's on antidepressants and was intoxicated, that's insulting. This woman died. The police were part of this. Believe me, that lawsuit is a worthy lawsuit. There will be a settlement
but
or a
Ivan,
jury
she's
verdict.
an
I
adult,
guarantee
and
it.
I could say this as a recovering alcoholic myself. You're an adult. Your family cannot control you. It was great that she was going to rehab, but her disease got her before she got to
I think
rehab.
Mike's
And
comments
that's
are-
the sad part.
Mike's comments
Jane, you're right.
This
serving-
is alcoholism at work, and
Do
this
not-
shows you what
Yes.
alcoholism does
Do
to
not
a human
let the
being.
police, do not let the security or the police off the hook here.
All right.
This woman was 45
We
years
gotta
old,
wrap it up there.
105 pounds. They could have done, why wasn't anyone watching her?
We
when
got
she
to
was
wrap it
cuffed?
up there. We got more controversy for you coming right up.
Where did he get the gun? Did he have? How did he have such quick access to a gun, or did he plan this
Mike,
for some
that's
time?
the first thing you said today that's been on the money. Look, I've represented a lot of juvenile defendants, a lot. And that's why you have this new legislation around the country where they charge 16, 17, 15, that age group as adults for adult crimes like this murder. The problem is the guns. Serious, violent juvenile crime is way up. That's the problem. It's because of the guns. I'd like to ask the psychologist about the video games, the desensitizing of our young people. Guns, guns, guns. They don't use their fist. They don't use a bat. They don't use brass knuckles. They use guns.
You know, Ivan,
Well, that's
you know,
because they're
I think
seeing it on television and in the movies. I
Right.
just walked out of the last two movies I went to because they're so violent.
Absolutely.
So
You
know, and
violently violent, I couldn't
Jane,
stand it.
you hit the nail right on the head. You know, I always guns. I own guns. You know, as I said before, guns don't kill people. People kill people. We have a violence problem in
Movies
this
kill
country.
people.
We have guns in the hands of young people.
But where are they getting
That-
these guns?
They get them from their
Well, yeah,
friends.
too
They
many
get them from the
guns.
pawn shop. They get them anywhere and everywhere.
You can't buy a gun at
That's-
15 years old.
Pardon
Okay,
me?
we got to
You can't
stop
buy a
it.
gun
We've
at
got a
15.
violent society, and let's
They
not
get
make
'em.
this
They get 'em.
an example of the violent society. So tone it down, guys. It's okay. But no, it's just horribly violent. We got to do something about it. It's out of control. Kids with guns killing left and right. Sure, the prosecution got the decision it wanted, but did it really have to show this tape? Joining me once again, Mike Brooks, Dr. Brian Russell, and Ivan Golde. Mike Brooks, they wanted the death penalty. They wanted to shock the jury into saying, yes, give them the death penalty. Did they really have to play this card?
You know, that's a great question. I mean, the father didn't want to see it. Apparently, jurors cried. They winced. You know, you can see the veins extending in their necks because it was that emotional. I mean, Jane, couldn't they have just possibly, and maybe Ivan can talk about this further, couldn't they have just shown maybe the torture? I mean, it was bad enough. First, they beat him with a belt. Then they hung him with a wire noose until he passed out.
Let me tell you this.
You know, it's just, and what is it in the psyche? What's it going to do to these jurors? You know, that's my question.
Mike, the
Yeah,
thing
Ivan Golde, does the judge have a responsibility? Your dad was a prominent judge. Does this judge have the responsibility to consider the trauma to the jurors and the victim's father? People, as Mike Brooks said, were crying. They were just distraught because it was torture to watch this tape.
The judge's role is to make sure the defendant receives a fair trial. That's the main focus of the judge. The prosecutor was doing his or her job and showing this video to the jury. I believe it was appropriate. I have never had a case where video evidence of a crime is not admitted. It's always admitted.
Yeah.
A picture
Why wasn't it admitted during the trial itself? Why did they wait for sentencing?
Guilty. He pled guilty. This is the proceeding. A picture is worth 1,000 words. As long as it's not overly repetitive and prejudicial, it comes in. They were doing their job. The defendant receives a fair trial. Trials are tough. This was a heinous crime. The jurors had to see it, and it came back with a result that I think many would agree.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Ivan. And I thought you would say maybe the opposite, but you look at this precious little boy here, and what he went through. And I'm sure it'll be etched on the minds of those jurors for their entire life. But they need to put this guy to sleep.
It's what happened.
Exactly.
The focus is this is what happened. They need to see what happened. It's not common where you get a video of the actual
All right,
crime.
we got to put it right there. We're going to come back in a moment. The calls are lighting up. We want to hear from our viewers at home. Call us on this one. Say that crime victims and their families are victimized twice, once during the crime and then the second time during the trial. Is this an example where the judge decides to play a horrific video showing the rape of this 9-year-old boy over the objections of the victim's father? We want to hear from you. Tim in Kentucky, what is your question, sir? Tim?
Yes.
Tim, what's your question and your comment on this case,
Well,
sir?
I had a comment on there, and what it is
Okay.
is it's just like, in a case when someone robs a convenience store or a bank and they shoot someone, right? Well, they have that on video. They're allowed to admit that in, and, it's horrible for that little boy and his family, and I really feel for the jurors. But the thing about it is if they would, it's horrible, but there was a good result for it. If they would do this more, like, I can't believe I'm agreeing with a defense attorney, but if they would do this more of these animals will be basically euthanized, these child molesters and child
Well,
killers.
I'll tell you something. Don't call them animals, because animals don't torture and rape and kill the way this sicko, this sick human monster did. Brian Russell, psychologist, when we talk about the toll on the families of these victims, your heart goes out to this father who had to endure the knowledge that he lost his son in this horrific way and now has to sit there helplessly as they play this video in court.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's true that they're victimized again. It's true that this jury duty is going to be particularly tough duty. But let me tell you, Jane, I was recently an expert witness in a sexual predator case where the jury actually hung on the issue of whether or not the guy should be back out on the streets. So I agree with that caller that this did need to be shown, because it's just like we were talking about in the last 2 segments ago about how desensitized our country has become to violence. People on these juries need to understand how, I think, just evil and dangerous these people are. This guy had done this before, Jane. This guy was a convicted child rapist. What was he doing out? We have got to get tougher sooner, or we're going to have more of these cases.
The key issue is this is relevant evidence. This is something the jury must see. This is relevant as to whether or not he should receive the death penalty eventually. That's what this is all about. Not about the parents' feelings, not about the jurors' feelings. This is about the defendant. That's why this video was shown to the jury.
All right, quickly, Sharon in Tennessee, your question, ma'am.
Well, it's a comment. I do have sympathy for the family, and as horrific and painful as it is to have to watch something like that, I think it's necessary if that's what it takes in order to get the death penalty. And, chances are, unless he's isolated once he's locked up, somebody will take care of him anyway, hopefully slowly and painfully.
Well, I think everybody has made such an important point here about the fact that we are steeped in violence, but so often the violence that we're steeped in is glamorized. It's made beautiful. And those are the movies I walked out of. I think it was called Wanted with Angelina Jolie. I'm like, this is sick. We're glamorizing violence and turning it into performance art. Real violence is stomach churning. It makes you want to throw up. It makes you cry. And that's what these jurors were forced to see. Maybe if more Americans were forced to see what violence is really like, we would stop exhibiting it. And that's my final word. I want to thank our panel. Fabulous, fabulous panel. We appreciate you spending time with us tonight. I am once again Jane Velez Mitchell. You can catch Prime News every day starting at 5 p.m. Eastern.